We're looking at a live picture of a fire at the old Capitol building in Iowa City. We should tell you that fire crews are on the scene right now, but this building is ablaze. This fire broke out not too long ago this morning. The old Capitol building in Iowa City is on fire and crews are on the scene. We don't have any specific details available at this point. We don't know if anybody was in the building when the fire broke out. This building now houses a museum of Iowa historical artifacts and Iowa government. This old Capitol building is under renovation at this point, and again, we stress that we can't make a connection at this point whether the renovation work being done on the old Capitol building had anything to do with sparking this fire. They have been stripping the old Capitol, going down to the original wood. Again, we don't know if any workers were actually working on the building at the time the fire broke out or if anybody was inside the old Capitol. But this is amazing live pictures from Iowa City, from our Iowa City Coralville Hawkeye. Some of the fire that you're looking at may be consuming scaffolding that has been surrounding the Capitol as workers have been stripping down to the original wood and also doing some waterproofing on the old Capitol building. We're trying to get you a closer picture. Of course, they just renovated the entire gold dome and put new gold leaf on top of the old Capitol. That, of course, as you can see, is pretty much destroyed by the fire that you are looking at. We also don't know how deep this fire goes into the building at this point. We don't see any flames. If we could remove the captioning at the bottom of the screen, you can see that we can't see any flames whatsoever coming out of the lower floors of this building. It seems to be contained at this point to the rotunda area and the Capitol dome. We don't have any more information at this point. We're going to stay with this story, though, until we start to get more details in from Iowa City. But again, fire crews are working to battle this fire. They are pouring water on it as much as they can to keep the flames from spreading and to keep it under control, because obviously most of the artifacts in this museum are contained on the lower floors. And so they're going to try to do everything they can in order to keep that fire from spreading. TV9's Iowa City reporter Mike Wagner is only a couple of blocks away from the old Capitol building, and we hope to hear from him in just a couple of moments. But again, for those of you just tuning in, you are looking live from our Iowa City Coralville Hawkeye as the old Capitol building burns in Iowa City. A lot of history contained in that building, not only history from Eastern Iowa and the University of Iowa, but Iowa history, government history in general, as that was the very first Capitol before it was moved to the city of Des Moines. During the more than 150 years that Old Capitol has served Iowa as a seat of government and education, it has become a symbol of pride and excellence for the University of Iowa, Iowa City, and of course, the state of Iowa. When Old Capitol's cornerstone was laid back on Independence Day in 1840, Iowa City became the first permanent capital of Iowa. We can easily say now that pretty much the entire Capitol dome has been destroyed as this fire continues to burn. You can also see flames lower down from the top of the Capitol dome as it starts to burn through the roof. And of course, everyone's greatest fear would be that these flames spread down into the lower sections. You can see water. If you look at the left-hand corner right down near the bottom, you can see firefighters' water spray coming up to try to battle that fire. But now you see the flames spreading at the base of the dome on the roof of the old Capitol building. This fire is spreading very, very quickly. When the state government moved to Des Moines, I believe it was back in the late 1850s, the old Capitol was deeded to the University of Iowa and became the first building owned by the university. The UI's charter was made official by the first Iowa General Assembly in 1847 in this old Capitol building. The building's historic restoration began actually not just recently, but back in 1970. And it's been under renovation on and off again over the years. And again, you'll recall they just finished renovating the dome, the gold dome with gold leaf. And you'll recall there was some vandalism. Someone had used duct tape to send a message to someone they used to put on that dome. They were able to remove that duct tape with solvent, but again, this is much, much more damaging. You can see this old Capitol dome is about to collapse, as most of the structure is pretty much destroyed at this point, and you can see flames, if you look close, a little bit lower at the base of the rotunda dome. The major objective of firefighters right now is to keep this fire from spreading, and if they can, keep it from spreading to the lower buildings. Newscopter 9 pilot Bobby Ratliff has been discharged. He is taking to the air, and we hope to have some more pictures, live pictures from Newscopter 9 in a matter of minutes. Again, TV 9's Mike Wagner. He's also on the ground in Iowa City, a few blocks away, and we hope to hear from him as well. He could probably give you a better setting of the scene around the base. Obviously, when firefighters move into areas like this and they're fighting such a major blaze, all areas are cordoned off. So I would imagine right now that all areas surrounding the old Capitol building are blocked off at this point to keep pedestrians, obviously students, and any vehicles from entering the area. This is a heartbreaking picture. So much history going up in flames at this point. It will indeed, if they are able to restore this building, it will cost millions to replace what has already been destroyed. And there you can see more fire coming from the back end of the building on the University of Iowa campus. Again, this building became the first building owned by the university when the state government moved to Des Moines in 1857. It is a National Historic Landmark, dedicated as such back in 1976. Thankfully, as you can see, it looks like most of the flames at this point, of course, we can't tell what's burning on the inside of the building at this point, but it looks like most of the exterior flames have now been extinguished. Hundreds of gallons, if not thousands, being poured on the old Capitol dome. There is no way we can tell at this point what caused this fire. Again, it has been under renovation. There has been scaffolding surrounding the dome. That has burned. We don't know if any workers were there at the time or if anyone was inside the building. Plumes of white and gray and black smoke just billowing from the old Capitol dome. For those of you just joining us here at TV 9, you are watching live coverage of a fire that looks to be being brought under control by Iowa City firefighters. But just a few moments ago, flames shooting tens of feet into the air, and the old Capitol dome, the gold leaf dome, virtually destroyed in this fire. And you can see the water hoses being used to keep the flames under control. The flames look to be spreading at one point to the lower base of the Capitol dome, but again, it looks like those are under control as well. We have no way of telling at this point what's happened to the inside of this building. The old Capitol's cornerstone was laid back in 1840 by the first governor of the territory, Robert Lucas. We should also mention in 1847, the University of Iowa was founded in the old Capitol building. Again, the state capitol was moved to Des Moines in 1857. Years later, and the old Capitol became the first permanent building of the University of Iowa. We can only speculate at this point that there is minimal damage to the lower levels of this building. We can't see any flames whatsoever coming from the windows of the lower floors, where much of Iowa's history has been documented and on display for thousands and thousands of visitors who visit the University of Iowa each year. It doesn't look to be very busy on the University of Iowa campus. It's usually crowded at this time of the morning as students go to school, go to their classes. But again, I would imagine that fire officials and police officials are trying to keep as many people away from the area at this point as possible. I'm told that they are holding classes today at the University of Iowa, but of course a lot of students have now left campus to go home for the Thanksgiving holiday. Again, you are watching TV9 News live coverage of a very destructive fire at the old Capitol building in Iowa City. We are joined now live on Newsline 9 by TV9's Iowa City reporter Mike Wagner. Mike, you're on the scene. Can you describe for us what you can see there? Mike, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now, Scott.
Yes, go ahead. Describe for us what you can see from your vantage point at the scene.
Well, actually, Scott, I am on the other side of the old Capitol, probably from the images you're seeing. Those are from the west side. I'm on the east side that faces downtown, and right now I'd say there's a crowd of a good, 300, 400, 500 or more people watching right now. On my side, we have two fire trucks, just a regular pumper, kind of parked almost right in front of the old Capitol. We also have the bucket truck that is off to the south side of the old Capitol, spraying water on it from that direction. There are some active flames that we can see, and from what I'm seeing on this side, the gold dome appears to be gone or burned away. The scaffolding is charred. There are pieces of burnt plastic on it. There's a lot of smoke coming off of it. A police officer that was out here on the scene of the Pentecrest kind of urged us and asked us not to get too close because she said that the firefighters were concerned that it might collapse. Now, she said that she didn't know if they were concerned that the scaffolding would collapse or the actual physical dome structure would collapse, but there was some concern. Right now, firefighters, though, really just kind of spraying as much water as they can on that scaffolding to get the fire out, the flames out. You can see the enormous cloud of smoke that's kind of rising up into the sky right now. From what we can see on this side, it appears that most of the damage is just to that old Capitol dome area and to the scaffolding around the dome. They were doing some renovation work. I was told by one person that they were even taking it down to the original wood as they were doing this to kind of do some water sealing work and some work to kind of clean it up. They've stopped spraying water now, I guess, to kind of get a look at the fire, and really it looks like the gold dome is gone. The flagpole is gone. It kind of looks right now that what's left is kind of from the gold dome or where the dome would be up. Scott, how's it look from what you can see?
Exactly what you're describing, Mike. It looks like the dome area of this building is virtually gone, destroyed, and we couldn't see any flamage at all coming from the lower levels of this building. And again, you say you don't see that either on your side, right?
I don't really see any smoke coming out of the building in any of the windows or anything like that. I know that they were concentrating. There was kind of an orange patch here on our side where they were really just kind of drowning it with water. And right now I'm not seeing that kind of intense heat right now. And I'm not really seeing any effort by the firefighters to get into the lower parts of the building. So I guess from what we can assume, from what we see, it appears that the fire is just contained to that dome area. The old Capitol, obviously, one of the first capitals of the state. If you go inside the building, you can see that there's the room where the Senate met, the room where the House met. You get a feel inside this building for just how small Iowa's government was when it first started. The governor's office is right across the hall from other government offices that now are a couple, 100 yards down the hallway if you go to the Capitol in Des Moines. This renovation project was one to kind of spruce things up and get everything back together. Hang on just a minute. The firefighters right now are talking to the photographer I work with and asking us not to get much closer to the scene just to kind of keep the crowds away. So as we get more information from the firefighters, Scott, we'll, of course, pass more of that on to you.
Okay. Mike Wagner live at the scene of the old Capitol building. And you can see most of the flames have been extinguished, but Mike Wagner says he still sees flames from his vantage point. He is on the other side of the building from where we are looking live right now. This is what it looked like just minutes ago when flames were shooting from the dome. And there has been effort after effort to preserve the history contained in Iowa's first Capitol building. There was a restoration project completed in 1976, and Old Capitol reopened as the University of Iowa's contribution to the U.S. bicentennial. And that's when the Old Capitol was officially designated a National Historic Landmark by the U.S. Department of Interior. And we are back live now as firefighters continue to pour water as much as possible on the old Capitol dome. We don't know a cause of this fire yet, and I'm sure because it was under renovation, there is a chance it could be construction related, but we cannot say that for sure. Obviously, the chemicals they use to strip down to the natural wood, they are very flammable, but again, we don't know if they were being used when this fire broke out this morning. We can only show you the live pictures of what's happening at this point. And I guess the best we can say right now is that firefighters seem to have most of the flames under control, but this is what they were dealing with not 10 minutes ago at the old Capitol Museum on the University of Iowa campus in Iowa City. That beautiful gold leaf dome is now gone. Mike also described the scene on the other side of this building where between, as he put it, 300 and 500 people have gathered just to watch in awe as this building goes up in flames. Firefighters keeping everybody back, even advising Mike and our photographer on the scene to keep their distance because they fear that there could be a collapse. You always have to exercise extreme caution in events like this. Again, this is what it looked like just shortly after 9 o'clock this morning. It's really sad to see so much history go up in flames, compounded by the fact that there has been so much work to restore this building, not only in recent years and recent decades, but recent days and months. Again, for those of our viewers just joining us this morning, you are looking at what happened just shortly after 9 o'clock this morning. This dome actually was burning at 9 o'clock this morning when firefighters arrived. This is the old Capitol building, the old museum on the Pentacrest at the University of Iowa campus in Iowa City. So much renovation work, so many efforts to restore this building, gone. Again, we don't know of any damage to the interior or the lower levels of this building, but as you can imagine, with all the water that has been sprayed on top of the dome, I would imagine there is significant water damage. There would also be smoke damage into the lower floors of this building. Fire damage, we cannot confirm or even speculate at this point, but all we can tell you is that we haven't seen any flames or smoke coming from the lower levels of the old Capitol. Another significant event back in 1857, the State Historical Society of Iowa was also founded in the old Capitol. The old Capitol housed the entire University of Iowa until 1863, when the university's second building, South Hall, was occupied. The old Capitol building, such a big part in the sesquicentennial celebration that Iowa commemorated just a few years ago. This video you're looking at was recorded earlier, roughly about 9 o'clock this morning. Now you are looking live as Newscopter 9's Captain Bobby Ratliff flies close to the scene. Bobby is live now over the burning old Capitol building in Iowa City.
Live, giving you some different views of the old Capitol. This is looking at the east side of the old Capitol building, and one of the definite positives is that it does appear that the fire was in the tower. The lower portions of the building look fine, but it did burn. Seems to burn very, very quickly, and very completely in the top portions where there was scaffolding and construction and renovation here at the old Capitol. But the very top of the building does seem to be very heavily damaged. There is still a little bit of more fire as we turn here, as we do circles around the building and the compound here. We'll go a little tighter as we pass through the smoke. Acrid burning smoke smell. Wood smoke, definitely wood smoke smell. We can see a little bit of flickering fire down in there, but boy, it burnt intensely and hotly, and may have just consumed, because it was so high up, consumed all the combustion products there in the tower very, very quickly, Scott.
A lot of that lumber, the wood that you were talking about, that acrid smoke, the wood burning smell, I mean, that wood, several years old, would be dried out and would go up in flames rather quickly.
That's right. Smells like a campfire, but pretty much, unfortunately. But it's not the whole building, which is very, very good. But I'm sure there is some history lost here. But it is just the very top, the gold dome. But it's not the whole building. But as you can see, a lot of the plastic sheeting, you know, they put that around there so they can work there in the wintertime. That looks quite a bit melted. And of course, that metal frame is not, I don't believe it's part of the tower. That metal frame is, as we're doing turns here, we're losing the path just a little bit, going circular around, Scott. But, you know, I know the firefighters, you know, one of the things we got to talk about is the firefighters, you know, notice they're not putting any more water on there. And I'm sure what they're trying to do is not to cause water damage.
Exactly. We were just talking about that before, Bobby. We're right now, we're looking at the video that was recorded a bit earlier when the flames were at their peak of intensity. That is an incredible looking fire.
it burnt very intensely and very, very quickly. But I think right now to put a lot of water on there would, you know, it could, you know, you could soak a lot of stuff and do a little bit more damage. But definitely the top of this thing is consumed and gone. There goes a little bit of water. Of course, they don't want it to spread, but they are working the fire. Now we've pulled the helicopter to where it's not moving anymore, and we can get a little steadier shot. You can see them spraying the scaffolding right there. So it's a sad day here in Iowa City to lose a landmark. It's not often that a community loses something that they're, well, it does happen in some places in the country. It's something that you expect to see every time you get up, maybe go to class or go to work, see that gold dome, and it's gone now, but I'm sure it can be replaced, Scott.
Being the first Capitol building in the state of Iowa, our first Capitol, and the first building of the University of Iowa, this is a sad day for the entire state. This will be covered in newspapers and on television and radio throughout the state of Iowa.
That is true. It's a little history gone, but the main building looks to be in good shape, and I'm sure the firefighters will keep it from spreading. But the gold dome is gone, and you know, of course, the speculation will start about construction and what happened, but you know, more than likely it wasn't intentional, and can be repaired. But here in Iowa City, it shocked everybody this morning, that's for sure, to lose this very, very important piece of history.
This is one of the advantages of having Iowa's only live newscopter, where we can bring you live coverage and show you the extent of the damage in situations like this when people just want answers as they watch live here at TV9. Bobby, we appreciate your coverage and your pictures live from Iowa City this morning. Firefighters continue to spray water on the old Capitol Dome. Again, the old Capitol Dome in Iowa City on the University of Iowa campus, going up in flames. At this point, it looks like the dome itself is where the fire was contained, and we will have live coverage at the top of the hour and again on TV9 News at 11:30. I'm Scott Sanborn. Stay with your 24-hour news source, KCRG TV9.
Now, this breaking news story from your 24-hour news source, KCRG TV9.
This is Scott Sanborn in the TV9 studios with continuing coverage of a devastating fire on the University of Iowa campus. This is how it looked earlier this morning, right around 9 o'clock, when flames broke out in the old Capitol Dome on the old Capitol Building and Museum on the University of Iowa campus. We have some new information. We're told workers using handheld torches to remove asbestos from the dome as part of renovation work may have set the old Capitol Dome on fire. Of course, a mistake, but a costly mistake at that. TV9's Iowa City reporter Mike Wagner is live on the scene in Iowa City. Mike?
Well, Scott, those workers were doing renovation work up on the dome, and that is the work that has the scaffolding right now that's surrounding the dome. The plastic around that scaffolding was in place because of the asbestos. There were concerns that those asbestos fibers would get out, and actually that plastic, you can see a lot of it is charred right now. It is wrapped around the scaffolding, kind of just burnt into it. Earlier when I was talking, earlier when I was talking with some of the people that were inside the building, they tell me that when they first came out, there was a tremendous amount of smoke that was coming from within the plastic area, but not a lot of flames. But they say that as the smoke grew and the clouds got bigger and bigger and bigger, then the flames started, and then they say it just took off all at once. Excuse me again. And right now the fire crews, they dumped a lot of water on it at the time. They were able to get here to the scene and quickly put the fire out. We're told in talking to folks who were inside the building that there were about 5 to 6 people. The building doesn't open until 10 o'clock, so there weren't a whole lot of tours or other groups of people inside the building, just mostly people in the basement that were in some university offices, and also people that were there in the university's museum that's in the basement. However, those people were able to get safely out of the building. We haven't seen any of those construction workers anywhere here on the scene, but they were up top this morning doing some work, and right now, as we look, we can see that there is a little bit of orange that's still kind of creeping out, but most of the smoke is out. It appears that the flames are out. Firefighters have not been able to give us much of a briefing to explain just what happened, how they were able to get it out, and where we go from here, or to paint a pretty good picture as to what the interior damage is like. They're telling us that they should have some kind of news briefing later. We hope to have more details on TV9 News 1130. Scott?
Mike, you work just blocks away from the old Capitol building in the TV9 Iowa City newsroom. Renovation has been going on there for quite some time.
It has been going on. They've been trying to kind of strip away the layers of paint, strip away all the layers, and get the building kind of back to its old form. One of the things that they were doing, we were told, was that they were stripping away paint and plastic and all that, taking it down to the original wood that hadn't been seen since the building was first built.
Thanks. Mike Wagner live in Iowa City on the scene of the old Capitol building, which caught fire earlier this morning. We're told that the fire was reported at around 20 minutes to 9 this morning, and this is how it looked as we showed you live pictures from the Iowa City Coralville Hawkeye as flames erupted and burned away the entire dome, which was under construction. We have some new information right now. Glenn Carrier of Shullsburg, Wisconsin, has been working on the renovation at the old Capitol building since August. He says he and other workers were on the scaffolding around the dome removing asbestos with open torch flames when he saw the wood catch fire. Glenn Carrier says it happened so quickly, all the workers could do was to just get out of there. So there were workers on the scaffolding around the dome when the fire broke out, apparently sparked by open torch flames that were being used to remove asbestos from around that area. Again, 5 or 6 people inside the building at the time. Everybody escaped safely. We will have further updates throughout the morning, including another live report at the top of the hour, and watch for a complete report on this story on TV9 News at 11:30. I'm Scott Sanborn. Stay with your 24-hour news source, TV9.